Most people think they hold every tiny detail about Dirty Harry in the palm of their hands. You think you do too. Consider this: the man who almost played Callahan couldn't even hold the prop. The villain was ripped straight from a chilling, unsolved police file. And the scene that caused the most explosive argument between Eastwood and the director wasn't even in the script to begin with. Forget the clichéd cinematic lessons. Peel back the following 21 hidden corners, and you will see that the most iconic frames are sometimes born from Hollywood's most insane and unimaginably desperate decisions. 1. The resurrection of a lost metallic relic. Cast your mind back to a desolate machine shop in Springfield, Massachusetts, in the late 60s. Here, the renowned metalworks manufacturer Smith & Wesson had just made a calculated economic decision to kill off one of the most massive blocks of steel they had ever forged, the Model 29. The reasoning was purely practical. It was too huge, the recoil too terrifying. Not a single patrolman wanted to strap a bulky, 3-pound chunk of metal to his hip while running the steep streets of San Francisco. The market had no demand. The assembly line had its power cut. Engineers filed the blueprints away in drawers, assuming this creation had faded into the past for good. Fast forward to 1971 on the Warner Brothers set. The prop design team faced a grueling problem. The script demanded the protagonist wield something with physical gravity, a symbol of street-level suppression meant to deter lawbreakers, to cut costs and spare the actor's arm during long takes. The design crew proposed a cheap alternative, forged from lightweight aluminum or hard plastic, easy to handle and capable of fooling the camera lens. Clint Eastwood swiped the idea off the table. For a man who rose through the ranks of gritty westerns, fakes were an insult to the craft. Eastwood didn't just need the look, he needed the weight. He needed the cold, heavy drag of over 1.2 kilograms of solid steel chaining down his wrist. It was that exact. Grueling physical weight that would pull his shoulder down, forging that asymmetrical, slightly forward-leaning posture, the very stance that became Harry Callahan's exclusive trademark, unable to persuade their leading man. The producers had no choice but to dial straight to the Springfield factory. Their request sounded like a sick joke: reassemble a relic that had gone extinct. The veteran machinists at Smith & Wesson had to trudge back into the old shop, dig through scrap bins, and scavenge the very last stockpiled parts just to hand-assemble the sole patched-together chunks of metal for the on-screen inspector. To this day, the manufacturer has never released an official archive confirming exactly how many handcrafted prototypes were built for that demand. Whispers among insiders suggest around 3 versions were forged. But did they all make it to the set? Or are there test models lying dormant in the glass case of some anonymous antiquities collector? It remains a historical void that drives memorabilia hunters mad. The aftermath of that stubbornness on set is undeniable. The day the film hit theaters, a seismic shockwave ripped through retail stores across America. Audiences flocked to hunt down the inspector's toy. The wait lists stretched endlessly. Orders flooded into Springfield with such overwhelming volume that the board of directors had no other choice. They had to urgently recall workers, wipe the dust off the machinery, and flip the switch to resurrect an entire dead production line. A movie prop had revived a segment of a mechanical empire, and that stubbornness was merely the dawn of Eastwood's relentless rejection of safety behind the lens. 2. The gamble. Without a green screen, 70s cinema was not a playground for graphic algorithms. There were no giant green canvases enveloping the set, no invisible cables to be erased in post-production, and certainly no digital face replacement technology to salvage fatal mistakes. In that era, when the director yelled, "Action!" gravity and unforgiving concrete were the only things waiting for you at the bottom. Those who grew up with VHS tapes surely cannot forget the suffocating sequence in the film's third act. When the villain hijacks the school bus, Harry Callahan has no helicopter backup, no tactical SWAT team. He stands alone on a highway overpass, waiting for the roaring steel machine hurtling beneath him, according to the unwritten rules of Hollywood and strict insurance clauses. This is the exact moment an A-list leading man steps behind the camera and surrenders his place to a stunt double in a wig. But Eastwood brushed off every warning from the logistics crew and the action director. His reasoning was viciously raw. Eastwood wagered with the risk because he believed in a ruthless philosophy. True danger is the only tool that forces human beings to reveal their most genuine reactions. Fear cannot be faked. San Francisco was howling with wind that day, stripped of advanced safety gear. Eastwood stepped onto the edge of the bridge himself, his eyes locked on the roof of the speeding vehicle. He calculated the trajectory in his head, timed the rhythm, and let himself free fall. The landing lacked any cushion between flesh and metal. Eastwood's face registered sharp and raw right into the lens. He wasn't acting out that reaction. He didn't have to. The physical shock did the heavy lifting of theatrical technique. The audience that year didn't applaud the grand visual effects. They held their breath because they realized the man in front of them had just hurled his own body onto the boundary of life and death. A standard of masculinity and raw authenticity that modern action blockbusters rarely dare to recreate. There is no official record of what the set's medical team was instructed to prepare for that afternoon. Were they ready for a severe trauma case or a scenario vastly worse? This extreme authenticity shaped a monument. Yet, the grit sometimes lies not just in what you see in the frame, but in the footage so inherently dark that its creators had to destroy it with their own hands before it ever saw the light of day. 3. The sealed extreme footage. The bank confrontation early in the film became a textbook example for urban action. The San Francisco streets are gridlocked. Harry Callahan strolls casually through a hail of bullets, half chewing a hot dog, and caps it off with a classic monologue about a game of chance. Everything manifested flawlessly on screen. But that perfection came at the cost of tearing up a terrifyingly grim page of the script. In the first draft, things didn't close with cold, calculated silence. The writer wanted to push the character's psychological limits further, delivering a genuine shock to 1970s audiences after taking control of the situation instead of delivering a sarcastic remark. The original script required Harry to turn the muzzle of his weapon toward himself. He would stare dead into the eyes of his adversary, flash a chilling smile, an act of sickening provocation before turning his back and walking away. On set that day, Clint Eastwood and director Don Siegel held the script in their hands. The atmosphere sank. The two men looked at each other and mutually decided to cross it out on the spot. They intimately understood the fragile border between a pragmatic enforcer of justice and an unhinged psychopath. The quiet, brooding silence was the very essence of Callahan's true grit. Pushing the action into the realm of the theatrical would shatter the character's heavy gravity, turning him into a caricature. That draft was sealed away forever, never committed to film. Did anyone in the crew that day secretly stash that red-inked page as a relic, or was it shredded to dust in a studio machine? It is a question that Hollywood collectors still whisper about, searching in vain. But the real battle didn't happen in front of the lens. It occurred on the final afternoon of the shoot, in a desolate suburban quarry when the two most stubborn men on set began warring over a badge. 4. The altercation over the badge. A barren quarry, choking dust, and the heavy breathing of men pushed to their breaking point. The film's ending was supposed to veer into a vastly different, highly philosophical direction if director Don Siegel had gotten his way. With a nostalgic vision, Siegel wanted to wring the emotion out of the audience. He demanded that after the dust settled, Harry Callahan would slowly unpin the badge from his chest and hurl it straight into the murky water. It was a direct homage to the classic high noon, a symbol of rejecting the law enforcement system when the boundaries of the law render it useless. But Eastwood violently opposed it. He argued fiercely right on set, ignoring the scorching sun and the exhaustion of the entire crew. Eastwood had a grip on his character. Callahan wasn't a dignified philosopher, let alone the type to toss away his livelihood over momentary frustration. He was a diligent street sweeper, a pragmatist who accepted living within that rotting system because, outside of it, he had nothing else. Tossing the badge meant surrendering after hours of bickering. As the shadows grew long, they reached a costly compromise. The frame only captures the moment Harry raises his hand, intending to fling the badge away, but then freezes. His fingers curl around the cold metal, and he quietly slips it into his pocket. There are no records indicating whether Siegel genuinely accepted that outcome in his heart, or if he was simply too exhausted to keep fighting in the twilight. This silent compromise forged a modern action monument. But before Eastwood even arrived to argue over that badge, this script had passed through the hands of 3 other men, and all 3 shoved it away for reasons Hollywood has never formally admitted. 5. The manuscript rejected by a Western legend. When the film script was first born, it carried a different name, Dead Right, a title heavy with judgment, and it was written as if only one man in the world could carry it: silver screen legend John Wayne. Picture John Wayne, the paragon of righteousness, a towering figure harboring the ideal of immortal justice, draped in a trench coat, striding through the San Francisco fog. It was a box office guarantee any producer would kill for. They confidently dropped the dossier on his desk, but upon flipping through the first pages, John Wayne flatly pushed it away, not because he misunderstood the story, but because he could not stomach the level of violence and brutality the script laid bare. A cop solving problems with a merciless gun barrel instead of the law was a figure running directly counter to the values he championed. He refused the gamble, unwilling to tarnish the Knight of Light image he had spent decades painstakingly constructing. The script was returned, carrying a clear message. This world is too filthy for a hero used to standing in the sun. John Wayne's refusal forced the studio into a hard pivot. They couldn't use a classic hero. They needed someone more weather-beaten, more cynical, a man carrying the exhaustion of an entire generation. And instantly, another American icon nodded in agreement. 6. The transformation stripped from Sinatra, following Wayne's rejection. Studio executives immediately swiveled toward a man wielding timeless magnetism, Frank Sinatra. At 55, Sinatra was an impeccable choice to fill that void. Fans of the era could easily envision his world-weary half-smile, his razor-sharp gaze beneath the brim of a fedora, and his street-smart aura when staring down urban criminals. Everything was locked and loaded. The shooting schedule was finalized. The wardrobe department had taken his measurements, but Hollywood history always harbors cruel, ironic twists. A wrist injury thought to have been laid to rest since Sinatra's time on The Manchurian Candidate years prior suddenly flared up with agonizing pain. During tests with the prop department, a grim truth materialized right in front of the lens. Sinatra could not steadily lift that specialized 1 kilogram chunk of metal with one hand. No algorithm or camera angle can conceal a trembling arm in a film demanding physical precision. He was forced to swallow his pride and withdraw. That decision didn't just strip away an iconic role, it shoved the studio into a panic, until the day he died. Sinatra never publicly spoke of the moment he had to let go of that prop on set, not once. The production froze. The leading man's chair sat empty. A barrage of scripts was urgently dispatched to the most seasoned veterans in the film capital. But what they received back was worse than a mere shake of the head. 7. 3 consecutive rejections from veteran heavyweights. The dossier was thrown back onto the desk. The studio desperately sought out Steve McQueen. He had just triggered a box office earthquake with the action masterpiece Bullet, and taking on another role as a San Francisco street inspector seemed like the most obvious cash grab. But McQueen instantly declined. The reason he gave was as sarcastic as it was grounded. He had just flawlessly executed a cop role. Why repeat himself only to be nailed to a single archetype following McQueen's refusal? lucrative offers were placed into the hands of two other titans, Paul Newman and Burt Lancaster. Both legends cracked the script open, read the opening pages, and quietly closed it. Their reasoning didn't stem from salary disputes or scheduling conflicts. They were sharp enough to spot the ticking time bombs hidden between the lines of dialogue. Newman and Lancaster were both wary of the right-wing political undertones and the protagonist's extremism, in an era where the American public was deeply fractured by social movements. No veteran actor wanted to wager his decades-long reputation on a man with a moral boundary as blurred as Harry Callahan. A question remains that film journalists still frequently ask: were those legends truly afraid of the script's dark corners? Or did they fear the wrath of the left-leaning critics of the time? The truest answer has likely been taken to the grave. The project descended into deep despair once more. But before stepping out of the boardroom, Newman turned back and uttered a sentence no studio executive saw coming that day. 8. The pointing finger that sealed the wager. Paul Newman shoved the script away, but he didn't throw it in the trash, with the keen eye of an actor-director. Newman pointed the studio heads toward a name in desperate need of a breakthrough: Clint Eastwood. At the time, Eastwood was still struggling to shed the colossal shadow of the nameless, silent cowboy wandering the barren deserts of Italian cinema. Upon holding the manuscript, Eastwood saw what Newman, Lancaster, and Wayne feared. He saw a golden opportunity. Eastwood instantly agreed, officially discarding the dust-covered poncho to don the wrinkled suit of an urban detective. Eastwood was genuinely frustrated with the legal system of the era, a machine he felt protected the rights of the perpetrators more than the victims. He used Harry Callahan as a megaphone for that outrage. Eastwood later admitted he read the entire script in one sleepless night. Yet, to this day, he has never detailed that night what specific thoughts drove him to commit to a character capable of ruining anyone's career. However, Eastwood was never an obedient subordinate to studio bosses. The second he signed the contract, he immediately laid down a behind-the-scenes demand that froze the entire executive board in its tracks. 9. The loophole, behind the lens. To seize full control of the film's direction, Eastwood issued a prerequisite: Don Siegel must be the one sitting in the director's chair. The catch was, this presented a nearly incurable legal nightmare. At the time, Siegel was bound by an ironclad exclusive contract with Universal. Meanwhile, this project rested in the hands of Warner Brothers, in the Hollywood underworld. Corporate giants yielding and lending their golden boy directors to rivals was an unprecedented taboo. A legal bloodbath dragging on for years was the scenario Warner Brothers foresaw. But Eastwood didn't care about the contract clauses no one dared break, leveraging the pressure of his rising star status. He personally drove to Universal headquarters, knocking on the doors of the top brass to negotiate borrowing the man, in a film capital infested with calculation and cold contracts. Rarely does anyone put their entire personal reputation on the line to vouch for someone they trust. But Eastwood did it, shattering the operational rules of the studio system, paving the way for one of the heaviest psychological thrillers of the decade. The details of the covert deals, the exact economic benefits traded on the negotiating table that day to make Universal concede Siegel. That remains a classified file no executive intends to spill until the day they close their eyes. The dynamic duo was set. Hollywood's most masculine pairing got to work. But the ironic truth is, the gunpowder-scented foundation they stood upon was molded by a woman's hand. 10. The name Hollywood deliberately forgot. If you dig up reviews or analytical pieces on the gravity of Dirty Harry, you will find a long list of praised men. But a truth still lurks in the shadows. The grittiest, coldest, and most densely masculine script of the 1970s was co-written by a woman, Rita M. Fink. Her name appears clearly in the film's credits, right beside her husband, Harry Julian Fink. The presence of a female screenwriter on a purely violent action project was an incredibly rare anomaly. Yet, try to hunt down a film article, an in-depth interview, or a retrospective program over the last 50 years that mentions Rita M. Fink when analyzing the success of Dirty Harry. You will find almost nothing. Cinematic history and Hollywood's PR machine chose to ignore her contribution, funneling the spotlight solely onto the male figures. They didn't erase her name from the poster, they simply never brought her up. How many spine-chilling lines of dialogue, how many ruthless decisions made by the protagonist actually sprang from the pen and perspective of this woman? The detailed script meeting minutes are gone, burying Rita M. Fink's true role beneath the dust of time forever. And the script's complexity doesn't end there. The greatest monologue in the film, the moment that defined the entire Dirty Harry franchise, was actually birthed by the hands of an anonymous, uncredited ghostwriter. 11. The ghostwriter behind the iconic line. Everyone remembers the moment the Model 29 is leveled directly at the criminal on the asphalt, and the cold dialogue rings out, "Do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk?" That challenge instantly became the catchphrase of a generation, burrowing deep into American pop culture. But if you scan the film's credits, you will never find the name of the man who actually sculpted it. Within the circles of Hollywood screenwriters, a whispered legend circulates that the studio has never officially confirmed that the man behind those razor-sharp lines was John Milius, the rebellious giant, the most volatile and notorious screenwriter of the era. Milius, who would later forge the masterpiece Apocalypse Now, was allegedly brought in secretly by Eastwood to tune up the old drafts. His mission was to inject extra grit and ruthless pragmatism into Harry Callahan's every word. Having a writer like Milius tamper with the project without credit pushed the work's abrasive nature to the maximum. What percentage of the actual script did Milius rewrite? How many other iconic lines? How many cold-blooded on-screen decisions were actually the handiwork of this phantom writer? The final draft is perhaps something only Milius and Eastwood truly understand, and they carry that secret like an unspoken rule of the studio system. The script and the lead actor were secured. The San Francisco streetscapes were primed. But director Don Siegel's most agonizing puzzle was just revealing itself, finding a face unhinged enough to counter Clint Eastwood's sheer mass. 12. The extreme choice left. In The Void, Siegel didn't want a muscular thug, a scar-faced brute, or a cheap, cookie-cutter villain. He needed a genuine psychological shock, a betrayal of all audience expectations the second this character appeared on screen. And the first name that popped into the director's head was Audie Murphy, to anyone who lived through the 50s and 60s. Audie Murphy wasn't just a movie star, he was the most decorated American soldier of World War II, a living monument to bravery and national heroism. Siegel wanted to take that very monument of light, paint it black, and turn it into America's worst nightmare. Imagine the sheer terror of the audience back then, watching their exemplary hero gripping a weapon and sowing chaos across the headlines. A deeply subversive casting idea, but that mad vision was abandoned forever. In late May 1971, a plane crash claimed Murphy's life, extinguishing the most audacious idea in action film history before it even hatched. No one knows which page of the script Murphy managed to read before everything ended in flames that day, stripped of the trump card that was the national hero. Siegel was forced to tear through the theaters hunting for a replacement. This time, he wasn't looking for a hero. He sought a visage so harmless it could deceive millions of eyes in broad daylight. 13. The Choir Boy. Casting Siegel's gaze finally locked onto Andy Robinson, a relatively unknown off-Broadway stage actor with zero experience facing massive cinematic lenses. Robinson lacked sharp edges, he had no muscle, and possessed a fundamentally non-threatening exterior. Siegel's logic for this choice was brutally pragmatic. He needed someone with the face of a choir boy. Audiences instinctively guard themselves against rugged, hardened men. But a scrawny youth with blonde hair, an innocent smile, and clear eyes. That is the kind of man who can casually step onto a bus full of school children without triggering an ounce of suspicion from the driver. The madness fracturing from within a saintly shell is always more unpredictable and 100 times more spine-chilling than muscular intimidation. Robinson had landed the role of a lifetime. But holding the script, he immediately noticed a gaping void. The text offered zero explanation for Scorpio's psychological origins. He is extorting the city. But why did he choose such a radical path? What is his history? For a classically trained stage actor like Robinson, playing a one-dimensional villain was unacceptable. Since the script wouldn't explain it, he decided to rewrite the history for himself. 14. The underground biography, penned by the actor. The director just needed a face, but Robinson needed a soul before cameras rolled. The actor posed the core question, what could shatter a human being beyond repair? He began forging a detailed, underground profile for Scorpio, something even the screenwriters hadn't provided, in Robinson's mind. The man he was playing wasn't born a demon. He was a young man recently returned from the brutal war in Vietnam. His psyche had been pulverized from the inside by severe trauma from bombs and bullets. But upon returning, all he received was alienation and rejection from his own society. According to what Robinson shared later, every twitching gaze, manic smile, ragged breath, and paranoid action from Scorpio on film was not mere surface-level acting. It was rooted deeply in the secret dossier he had created himself, the deformed rebellion of a man backed into a dead end. This psychological investment morphed Scorpio into one of the most layered villains of the 1970s, even though not a single line in the film explains his past. What you witness on screen is the tip of an iceberg steeped in melancholy. Director Don Siegel never suppressed that underground creativity. On the contrary, he subtly played into Robinson's perspective, planting a tiny accessory on the villain that carried a biting satirical implication, a detail many viewers of the era inadvertently missed. 15. The satire of the Peace Belt. If you keenly slow down the VHS tape, you will spot a paradox so jarring it makes your skin crawl. A metal belt buckle bearing the peace symbol is ever present on Scorpio's hip. Many once assumed it was just a sloppy wardrobe continuity error of 70s cinema, a case of an actor mistakenly wearing personal attire on set. The presence of this item on a ruthless killer seemed like a blatant mockery. It took decades, during rare interviews near the end of his life, for director Don Siegel to confirm it was a deliberate setup, set against the backdrop of the anti-war movement deeply dividing America in 1971. Siegel wanted to inject an underlying political reading, a youth constantly demanding peace, wearing the symbol of the anti-war movement, yet serving as the very catalyst sowing the greatest chaos in the city. This razor-sharp satirical detail struck a nerve with a generation beginning to doubt the hollow moral slogans plastered across newspapers. He never revealed who on the crew first suggested pinning that accessory to the actor. Was it him, the screenwriter, or Andy Robinson himself? The answer remains buried, leaving only a haunting visual resonance on screen. The visual imagery was finalized. But for Scorpio to truly step off the screen and into nightmares, the film needed a catalyst to pierce straight through the audience's eardrums. 16. The score from the unconscious realm composer Lalo Schifrin tossed the tired formulas of the 1970s out the window. He played a heavy psychological hand by deciding to use a soaring, eerie female vocal as the dominant audio track whenever Scorpio appeared. This wasn't mere music. For Schifrin, those haunting, echoing notes represented the invisible whispers, the paranoid commands perpetually screaming within the character's fractured psyche. An audio mixing technique ahead of its time, not aimed at cheap jump scares. but designed to drag the viewer directly into an internal world that had severed all ties with reality. There is no record of Siegel and Eastwood's initial reaction when Schifrin played that bizarre demo in the studio. Did they hesitate before greenlighting such a massive auditory risk? You can use sound to echo madness, but on set, the actor himself had to genuinely live in that terror even against his own will. 17. The paradox of the prop hater. The most insane truth about this transcendent performance in real life. Andy Robinson was a fervent pacifist. He couldn't hide his instinctual reaction every time he touched cold metal props simulating firearms. Whenever performing an action scene, his body retaliated with pure fear. He continuously flinched and squeezed his eyes shut. The lack of professionalism reached a point where director Don Siegel had to suspend filming, forcing Robinson into a specialized handling training course just so he could keep his eyes wide open in the frame. Ironically, the extreme tension in his facial muscles and the internal resistance produced a feral, chillingly convincing performance. When the film was released, Robinson received countless death threats from audiences incapable of separating reality from cinema. Facing the mob's fury, the actor was forced to change his phone number. Every safety boundary Robinson had seemed shattered. But the most unforgiving moment for him on set wasn't the scene where he held a prop. It was the scene where he had to strangle a child. 18. Dragging family into the hostage scene. The hostage standoff at the dust-choked quarry is one of the most suffocating sequences in 1970s cinema. The script demanded Scorpio snatch a young boy to use as a human shield, carving a bloody path for his escape, initially. Director Don Siegel planned to put his own biological son in the frame to heighten the authenticity of the terror. But on the very morning of the shoot, the boy suddenly fell ill, unable to delay the schedule when all equipment was locked in. Siegel scanned the set and hastily picked a child wandering with the crew that day as a replacement. The coincidence is bone-chilling. The boy accidentally chosen was Andy Robinson's actual stepson in real life. Robinson was forced to violently clutch his own family member in the most brutal sequence of his entire career. The unease registered genuinely on the child's face, the strained veins bulging on the man's arm in that moment. Cinema and reality violently collided. It was no longer acting. It was the torment of real people trapped in a harrowing ordeal. Robinson inhabited the role so deeply that people forgot it was a film, and the reason everything on screen felt so intensely real, so suffocating, is because it was ripped directly from a living, breathing nightmare. 19. The Shadow from the Zodiac Files. Do you remember the spine-tingling sensation when the on-screen villain sent anonymous letters to the newspaper and threatened school buses that was not a product of screenwriters sitting in air-conditioned rooms? Scorpio was cast straight from the genuine files of the Zodiac Task Force, a dark shadow that was sending shockwaves through the entire San Francisco Bay Area in the early 70s. The letters filled with ciphers, the threats aimed at children, the arrogant defiance mocking authorities. All were chillingly real details. No one on the crew openly admitted this borrowing during promotional interviews, likely to sidestep a mountain of cumbersome legal trouble. They veiled it under the guise of artistic expression, but the parallel was too glaring for anyone living through that era to deny. Cinema had essentially hijacked the very terror suffocating the city to sell tickets. Many pop culture historians still pose a cold question. In 1971, did the real-life Phantom buy a ticket, sit quietly in the back row of the theater, and smile while watching his own cinematic clone run rampant on the silver screen? No one has the answer. The villain was drawn directly from reality. And ironically, the silver screen hero's style wasn't organically conceived either. It was borrowed from that dark shadow's greatest enemy. 20. The prototype for the silver screen style. Look closely at Harry Callahan's iconic design, the weathered coat, the scowling, exhausted gaze. and especially the trademark shoulder holster. Many in the film and criminology communities believe that look was not a spontaneous invention of the Hollywood wardrobe department. It was a mirrored reflection of Dave Toschi, the lead inspector in charge of the San Francisco Police Department's Zodiac Task Force, in real life. Toschi drained his youth, his sanity, and his family time chasing a phantom that never stepped into the light. The gridlock of those unsolved files wore him down, leaving permanent scars on his career. Hollywood lifted that exact exhausted, reckless, and weary demeanor to drape over the character of Callahan, crafting a police archetype vastly different from the polished heroes that came before. Did Toschi ever watch this film during those long, sleepless nights hunting the killer? What went through his mind seeing his own shadow, his own style, plastered onto a cinematic cop who resolved everything in a way the real-world law forbade? But cinema always finds a way to anesthetize reality. The singular difference between film and life. On screen, Harry Callahan gets to end it all with one decisive action in a desolate quarry. Meanwhile, the real Dave Toschi never attained that closure. He had to live with the unfinished business until the end of his days. The film's tribute to the real people out there did not stop at wardrobe choices or weary postures. It was permanently etched into a wall, flashing by in the very first minutes. 21. The name on the memorial wall. For just a few fleeting seconds at the film's opening, the police department's memorial wall appears in the frame. A casual viewer might assume those are merely prop names slapped on for background texture. But if you have the sharp eyes to pause the VHS tape, you will spot a humble inscription, Eric A. Zelms. This is a 100% genuine fact. Zelms was not an actor or a fictional character. He was one of the patrol officers who inadvertently crossed paths with the Zodiac suspect on a foggy October night in San Francisco in 1969, just months after that fateful encounter. On the first day of 1970, Zelms was shot and killed in a separate incident while on duty on the streets. Director Don Siegel's quiet inclusion of his name in the frame wasn't a promotional stunt. It was a silent bow, a personal moment of remembrance the crew dedicated to a young man who fell during that violence-plagued era, amidst a heavily commercialized production. The name Eric A. Zelms serves as an anchor tying the film to very real tragedies. Whose eyes did Zelms actually meet on that dark, foggy night? What did the true face of the man who walked past him look like? The answer remains buried with the young officer, forever a chilling shadow that was never dragged into the light. Epilogue, a challenge to the comments. Art always mirrors reality in the most ironic ways. Behind a classic masterpiece lies a barrage of insane decisions, mental and physical sacrifices made by artists, and historical imprints that never fade. Out of these 21 hidden corners, which detail have you memorized since the days of hunching over a boxy television screen? And which one genuinely made you raise an eyebrow in surprise? Have you ever wondered what would have happened if John Wayne had actually accepted the role? Or if Audie Murphy hadn't boarded that fateful flight? Drop your answers in the comments section. Flex your encyclopedic knowledge. And if you claim to be a die-hard Dirty Harry fan, proud of knowing every single frame but feel we still missed a classic fact, speak up and prove it. Dirty Harry isn't the only film Hollywood is keeping secrets about. See you in the next dig.